Hi, everyone. Welcome again to the Greatness Movement podcast. I'm your host, Kenny Weiss. I'm a life coach, speaker, author, and founder of the Greatness Movement based here in Phoenix, where we guide you to be the greatest version of yourself. Well, I hope you all had a great weekend. And tonight we're going to talk a little bit about fear. Well, fearless, that's like the new buzzword, right? You know, everyone wants to be fearless in everything they do. And there's kind of some misconceptions about fear. And I talk a lot about it in my book, Your Journey to Success. And we're going to dip into some of those things. You know, this is whether, a lot of people struggle with fear, whether it's about their, something going on in their business life, their personal life, their family life, their relationships. And fear, it's a natural reaction. It's something that's good for us. I mean, our amygdala is what actually activates. It's a part of our brain to keep us safe. Think of it this way. We have a built-in like bodyguard that's 50 feet in front of us. See, our amygdala senses things well before we're consciously aware of it. So picture, where a lot of fear comes from is that automatic response, the way the amygdala works, it's kind of out front of us and it'll sense things before we pick up on it consciously. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that and where that comes from. The one of the things I want to get across, though, about being fearless is one of the biggest misnomers when it comes to fear is people think they're actually afraid to fail. And as I contend in my book, and it's been my life experience, I have never in my life met anyone who's afraid to fail. And I know there's been tons of books written about it. Everybody says they're afraid to fail, but the bottom line is, if any part of your life, if you're afraid to ask somebody out on a date, under the fear of failure, if you're afraid to take a new business challenge because you might fail, if you're afraid to start a new hobby because you might fail, if you're afraid to go on Dancing with the Stars or any one of those shows because you're afraid to not fail, it's a misnomer. What you're actually afraid of is success, because by choosing not to ask somebody out, by choosing not to pursue the business or the Dancing with the Stars, whatever it may be, you've already chosen to fail. You're not afraid of it. You're choosing it every single minute of the day. Every time you sit there and that feeling comes up and you choose to stay stuck and not move past it, you're scared to death of success. You have absolutely no fear of failure. And so that's what I always find it fascinating when everybody, points that out, fear of failure. And I'm like, nobody's afraid to fail. We constantly choose failure over and over. We choose to never pursue our dream or never face. I mean, I run into it a lot with what I do. Lots of people watch my show, get in touch, and they're afraid to do the personal work. Well, that's a fear of success. Their life could turn around. There's a great quote that sums it up. It's by a poet. His name's Frederick Seidel. And this really encapsulates where that fear of success comes from, what keeps us from being fearless. And that's what I'm going to get into tonight. His quote is, "Don't cure me. Sickness is my me. My terror is that you would set me free." Think of that. Don't cure me. Sickness is my me. My terror is that you would set me free. See, that's what's happening to us when we consider a change. Our sickness, the me, remember, sickness is my me. So if you're afraid to ask somebody out, if you're afraid to take on a new career or company or job or hobby, whatever it is, that's your sickness. You're perfectly fine with failure. You're perfectly fine with your life being stuck. And so the reason you stay there is you don't want to be cured. Your actual terror is that you'd be set free of that person that you've developed that stays in that fear. Okay? I'm going to say it again. Don't cure me. Sickness is my me. My terror was you'd set me free. I run into that constantly. Over 80% of first-time clients, people that call me, email me, whatever it is, whether they want to join a group, whether they want to hire me individually, over 80% never show up. Never. Some cancel, most just they set the appointment, they never arrive. They don't even say they're not coming. They just disappear. Whether they're going to join a group, we make arrangements to set up payment. They never follow through. They won't respond to phone calls or follow-up emails to get them signed up in the group. And so that right there is proof that they're not afraid of failing, because they called me. They got in touch with me because something in their life isn't working. It's in their words, not mine. In their words, their life is failing in some aspect. And I'm offering them a solution. I'm offering them the success they're looking for, but they don't want to be cured. They don't want that sickness that is their me. They don't want that taken from them. Their greatest fear is that I will help them and that they'll have to give up that sickness, that me. I'm going to get into the deeper reasons. This is everybody's fear. Deep down at their soul, everybody is scared to lose that self-concept that we've all developed that's kept us struggling in our lives. And I'm going to show you where that comes from and why it's always a fear of success and never failure. But the first thing we have to do when we're talking about how to become fearless is we have to understand what fear is. And as I've said this before, I haven't seen anybody break down fear the way I have. Not trying to toot my horn. It's just, I just see generalized, as I say all the time, the Nike philosophy, just do it, just push past your fears. That all sounds great, but if it worked, why isn't everybody doing it? My personal opinion, why a lot of the information that's out there, the reason it doesn't work, the reason people don't push past it, the reason people won't get rid of this sickness that is me, they won't overcome the terror of being set free, is they need more information, they need more understanding. And that's why I decided to go much deeper into all these topics, because I think I make up, I don't know if it's true, but my belief is if people understand the concept, it's easier for them to make that choice. And so fear, whatever your fear is, it always boils down to one of three things, or all three. It's either the fear of rejection, the fear of inadequacy, in other words, you don't think you have the skills, tools, or knowledge to do something, or the fear of powerlessness, okay? So I'm gonna go through all three of them. The fear of rejection, where that is born out, is in childhood. It's a learned response, okay? Because as infants, we don't have that. We don't have fear like that. We don't fear rejection. It only comes from the treatment or maltreatment of our parents and our caregivers, our siblings, our friends, our teachers, our coaches, our pastors, everybody we come in contact with. It's a learned behavior to fear rejection because it's something we experience. And so we try not to repeat that. And, there are common practices to overcome the fear of rejection. I've talked about them before. They're all out there: affirmations, mirror work, something I call feelization. Most people would say visualization. I don't like that term, because when you visualize something, the way most people visualize something, let's say you're an athlete and you're a golfer and you want to shoot 65. And so maybe you're rehearsing in your mind the round you're going to play. Most people, when they visualize, they're like standing here, they're watching themselves hit the golf shot, or they're watching themselves take the test, or they're watching themselves give an interview for a new job. They're visualizing from that place. So it's like outside of their body. They're watching a movie of themselves doing something. Well, that's actually third person dissociation. That's what rape and trauma victims do when trauma is severe, they actually leave their body and they watch it happen to them. It's a defense mechanism so that their soul doesn't, they don't have the emotional bandwidth to survive the traumatic incident. So it's a defense mechanism to leave their body. And so that's why I don't like visualization, because I don't like saying that term, because that's how most people do it. Also, visualization, even if you're able to sit there and visualize like a golf shot, looking through your eyes and seeing yourself hit the ball and where the ball goes, or you're writing the test answers, or you're looking at the people interviewing you. Very few people visualize that way. They don't visualize as though they're looking out their eyes. And that's why I never tell clients to visualize. I will walk them through. If you're going to visualize, you have to do it from your eyes, not watching yourself do it. But the biggest key, we become what we feel. And so that's why I say feelization. So what you really, it's like when people ask me, I get clients who want me to help them with public speaking. And I say, public speaking is simple. It's not that difficult. It requires two things, really one thing. What it requires is the ability to be open and vulnerable with your emotions. The reason people connect when I speak is because I'm so comfortable emotionally. We feel connection. We don't think connection, we feel it. It's something that touches us. All right. And so my willingness to be open vulnerably with my emotions is why people will gravitate towards me when I speak. And those people that we listen to speak and we're like, that was boring, that's because they were shut down emotionally. And so when people get nervous to speak, it's because they're afraid to be vulnerable emotionally. So that's all. It's a practice to learn to be vulnerable emotionally. But what I always tell them, as I get closer and closer to a speaking engagement, of course I get nervous. It's more excitement because I love to speak. I love talking about all this stuff. All I do is I sit in my office chair and I visualize myself walking out after the speech, walking down the stairs and out to my car. And all I'm caring about is how do I feel inside? Like I'm not practicing my lines or what I'm going to say. That's all a waste of time. My feelization is, what do I want to feel like when I leave this event? And so that's how I practice. I create the outcome I want with the way I feel. And so as I'm walking to my car going, God, that was fun. Man, I love that. That's how I prepare for any event. I prepare for the outcome and I feel it. Okay. I've talked about affirmations and mirror work and other podcasts, so please go back and look those up. But that's a way to handle rejection. But the biggest key to rejection is the reason we feel rejection is it's a blow to our self-esteem. We are suffering from low self-esteem. Whenever we fear rejection, no one ever rejects us. It's not possible. We get to interpret what happens. Every person leaves, comes, stays, whatever, based on their own inherent needs and wants. They're just doing what works best for them. It literally has nothing to do with us. They may say we're the problem, but that's just an immature response. They're in denial and they're projecting their own issues onto you. They don't want to take ownership. But if we feel rejected by them, that's because we're struggling with low self-esteem. Well, the greatest thing, I teach everyone affirmations, mirror work, feelization, they're all very important. The single greatest key to rebuild, if you want to if you want to be fearless around rejection, the key to self-esteem is your behavior, your choices. When we walk in who we are, our needs and wants, our morals and values, when we are not rejecting ourselves. See, that's a big reason why we feel rejection is somewhere in our life, we're rejecting ourselves. We're drinking, we're smoking, we're having affairs, we're smoking pot, doing drugs, watching porn, spending too much money. We're living outside of what we know to be our greatest self. And so we call it fear of failure. No, you're going against your own morals and values because you're afraid of letting go of the sickness that is you. You know it's not you. And that's the rub. Your behavior is, no, I want to go do this. This is what I'm meant to do, but I'm afraid of success. And so I'm going against my own needs and wants, morals and values. You're actually rejecting yourself. That's why you're not fearless, because you're actually doing it against you. And then you make it about somebody else rejecting you. That's how you avoid dealing with your own internal rejection. So the key to gain your self-esteem, to overcome the fear of rejection, is stop rejecting yourself. Start asking that man or woman out. Go for what you want in life. That's the secret. Please quit rejecting your greatness. That's why you aren't fearless. Is all day, every day, you're rejecting yourself. And then you're projecting it that other people are rejecting you, or you're afraid they're going to reject you. They can't. What's happening in that moment when you're afraid somebody's rejecting you? You're actually rejecting yourself. Okay? That's the truth of it. That's hard to accept and understand. But see, this is my point. I feel like if people really understood this, they'd go, oh my God, he's right. That's exactly, now I can see how my mood and everything changes when I overeat, I binge eat when I'm on my diet. I'm going against myself. I'm rejecting myself. And then I'm afraid to wear that nice dress or whatever it is, because, and then we project it that other people won't think we're attractive. And so it gets placed externally, but it's not external. It's internal. We've done the personal rejecting. So that's what's keeping you from being fearless. You are rejecting your greatness and your full potential. Okay? It's not that you're afraid of failure. It's that you're choosing failure repeatedly. All right? You are afraid. Your terror is that you would get set free of these false personas. It's really, we develop all, those are all learned personas of how we sabotage ourselves. That's all from childhood. I'm going to get to that in a second. And so that is what's keeping you from being fearless. That's the first part, the rejection part. The easiest one of all fears to handle is inadequacy. And that's not having the skills, tools, or knowledge to do something. Well, that's simple to overcome. Read books, take classes, watch YouTube videos, TED Talks, go to seminars, join groups, hire an expert to teach you whatever it is you want to learn about. If it's the stuff I talk about, hire me or someone else. Maybe, there's somebody else you think is a better fit for you. Hire them. But stop, again, rejecting yourself by not becoming an expert in the things you want. If you want a relationship, why aren't you reading every single book out there? Why aren't you watching YouTube videos? Why aren't you going to relationship courses? Why aren't you becoming a complete expert in how relationships work and how you're interacting in relationships? That's you, again, rejecting yourself. You're staying imprisoned in that sense of terror. You don't want to be set free. Okay? You're choosing failure. You're choosing fear. You're choosing not to get rid of the sickness that's in your relationship, that you bring into the relationship. Okay? The final one is powerlessness. Now, there are many, many layers to powerlessness. One of the first layers is the inability to say no. That's learned in childhood. I've talked about it many times. Think of it. While our parents, everything they ever meant to do was to love us. But because we don't teach how to be a parent, every single one of us has had, at the very least, what I would call irresponsible parenting. And I call it irresponsible because very, very few parents ever go learn how to be a parent. They just do what their parents did, or the opposite, or something they saw on TV. They don't go become an expert. And that's irresponsible. That's the most important job in our life. And the vast majority of people never read a single book, or they might read a book about pregnancy and think that's enough. It's something you have to study the rest of your life to learn. I've been reading for years And I spent the weekend with my daughter, and I screwed up all day long, like all day long. You know, she's 23 years old. She has her own daughter, and she said something to her daughter, and I started to correct her. Well, it's none of my business. She's 23 years old. She gets to parent, and if she wants to read about parenting or not, it's her choice. But it's not up to me to tell her. And I'm sitting there going, Kenny, geez, shut up. Stop. Well, where did I learn that? My father. My father couldn't stop correcting people. Okay? I mean, look at the show I'm doing. I'm correcting everybody. I'm just like my father. See? I still have tons of work to do. It never ends. This process never ends, but you have to make the choice to put yourself. See, I'm conquering my fear and becoming fearless by putting myself in a situation with my daughter repeatedly to learn how I'm being irresponsible as a parent, how I'm being imperfect as a parent, and how I can get better at it. This isn't about it becoming perfect or doing it right all the time. It's about recognizing when you do it imperfectly so that you can put a plan in place to fix it. That's what it's about. That's really what fearlessness is. Being willing to step into it, knowing you're going to screw up and go, who cares? Actually, the screw up is the gift. Do you see how that takes away my powerlessness? Do you see how it creates the solution? I've taken control of the situation. I've stepped into the fear. I've stepped in. I'm not going against myself. I'm not being inadequate. And going against myself meaning rejection. I'm not being inadequate. I'm not being powerless and going, oh, geez, I don't know what to do. No, I'm reading, studying all the time. And then I'm putting myself in situations with my kids where I get to test what I've learned. And I get to fight through those childhood feelings that we all suffer when our parents said something and then we hear ourselves saying the exact same thing to our kids. And I get to learn many times. I wanted to say it and I stopped. I went, hey, and just like that. And she's like, what? I said, never mind, nothing. Now she knows me well enough. She goes, you're about to boss me around. And I was like, yep, exactly. She's like, good job, Dad. It's cute. So, going back to that quote, you have to be willing to let go of how afraid you are of being set free. At its deepest level, the fear of powerlessness is the fear of success. And it's born out of, as I've talked about a lot, the attachment authenticity bind. Every single child has been through this. We need attachment to survive. We die without attachment. Authenticity is our other pursuit as a human being, the authentic pursuit of who we are. Well, throughout childhood, I ask two questions. One, whenever as a kid, if you ever felt sad, scared, or angry at anything your parents did or said, in that moment, could you discuss those feelings with them? There isn't a single person that can answer yes. That tells me you suffered at the very least irresponsible parenting, if not traumatic parenting, because you weren't allowed to express your authenticity. Mom and dad said, no, get in your room. No more discussion. Stomped on you. Second question is there any aspect of your life that you've never told your parents about? Well, everyone says yes to that question. There's lots of secrets we have from our parents. What that also tells you is if they knew this about me, they might sever attachment. See, every single one of us has suffered at the very least irresponsible parenting. We were not allowed to be our authentic selves. We had to develop a persona and a belief system to make them like us and them feel safe. That's what you're going up against. That's the second piece of that quote. My terror is that you set me free. Because when you're in that moment of trying to decide if you're going to pursue the relationship or the career, what you're up against is your mom and dad. That's what to become fearless, you have to conquer this aspect. This is where all of it lies. Because see, what you're up against is if I choose my greatness, if I choose my authentic best self, I'm letting go of all of these false personas and belief systems that kept me attached to my parents. If I let that go and I stop getting rid of the sickness that's in me, I sever that connection. Whether you recognize it consciously or not, that's what's happening. And if you don't believe that's true, I'll place a challenge. I will sit with anyone, and within 10 minutes, I will break down your whole childhood and show you how that's exactly what every single person does. Anyone, I'll sit in a Starbucks all day long. If you disagree with me, come. I'll sit there for free and I'll show you exactly. Now, you may be in denial because that's the fourth stage of the cycle I talk about in my book. I'm going to show it to you, but because of how fear and shame and denial work, you may not want to hear it. That's okay. But I can sit with anyone and show every single person that has not gone through the process that I teach lives their life this way. Every single client that ever comes into me, whether they come, I've had clients come for cancer, health issues, for relationship issues, business issues, trauma issues, everything, you name it. Always, in every single client, this is at the heart of their struggle. It always gets down to something in childhood, how they were stuck in the attachment, authenticity bind. They could not pursue themselves. And so as they're pursuing their greatness, they want more money, they want more success, whatever, until they can rework those messages and the belief systems that they developed to stay attached to their parents, to get their parents to love them, until they can sever that connection, rework it, and make it more healthy. That's what's keeping them from being fearless. Okay? What they find, like they're scary, what scares them so much is they think if I actually go pursue this, I'll lose connection. Actually, once you do it, what you discover is you have a more authentic attachment and connection than you've ever had. You could be 60 years old and you'll have a more authentic, deeper connection with your parents than you ever had. That's what happens in every single case. It's foolproof. So ultimately, what's keeping you from your fearlessness is the fear of rejection, which is you rejecting yourself. Inadequacy, you haven't gone and become an expert. You haven't gained the skills, tools, and knowledge in whatever it is you want to pursue, and you've made yourself powerless, okay? You've done that because by not having the expertise, by not gaining the self-esteem work through, by confronting these dynamics and rebuilding your self-esteem, and instead of choosing failure every day, choosing your greatness, you're going against yourself. And so you're setting yourself up, and that's part of what's making you powerless. And so until you can go back and mend that attachment authenticity bind, you will not live a fearless life. You may have moments where you're able to do something more positively, but it's unsustainable because you'll end up rejecting yourself to try and preserve the false attachment you created in childhood. Remember those two questions. Did you ever feel as a child when you were sad, angry, or scared in that moment, at anything your parents did or said, at anything they did or said, if you ever felt sad, angry, or scared in that moment, could you have a conversation with them? No. That right there means you lost your authenticity for attachment. You couldn't speak your truth. That part of you died, okay, for attachment. The second question was, is there any aspect of your life you've kept hidden from your parents? If there is, I've yet to meet a person who doesn't have some secret from their parents, that also tells me you gave up your soul, your self-esteem. This is where you learned rejection. You went inadequate, didn't learn the skills, tools, and knowledge to overcome this, and that's what's making you powerless. Until you overcome those dynamics, you cannot live fearlessly. That's what's stopping you. Now, I know everyone else out there, like, the information that's out there, it's all meant to really help you, but in my belief, it's too simple. it doesn't, it's not sustainable because they're not dealing with this deeper issue of the attachment authenticity bind. That has to be conquered for you to live fearlessly and sustain it. Okay. So there you go. If you would like more tips on how to overcome all of that, pick up my book. It's the only book that I'm aware of that I've read a lot of books. I haven't read all of them. But it's the only book that I've come across that will show you the way out of that. It's called Your Journey to Success. You can find it on Amazon. The only other person I'd really suggest for that is a gentleman named Gabor Mate, Gabor Mate with an apostrophe over the E. Gabor Mate. Now, he has several books. There's things about addiction and ADD. Read all of them because he really gets into what attachment is, authenticity is, what attunement, how, parenting dynamics. Even if whatever his books are, read them. You're going to learn so much about childhood dynamics and everything, even if the title sounds like it's about something else. He's a great resource if you want to overcome your inadequacy and confront the fearlessness around your inadequacy. Okay, so those would be my two resources for those of you looking to do more. For those of you who are truly ready to live fearless, go hire somebody, whether it's me or somebody else. Make an appointment. Go talk to somebody that can really teach you these dynamics. And if you're looking for a coach or a therapist, those are the things they have to really be an expert in childhood dynamics. Those are questions you want to ask. What do they know about codependence? What do they know about enmeshment? It's EN, enmeshment. What do they know about trauma bonds? What do they know about attachment, attunement, about self-esteem work? Like, those are the type of questions you want to ask them. Are they an expert in those types of areas? If they're not, keep calling around until you find somebody, because that's what you're going to need, is somebody who's well-versed in those areas. All right, everybody. I appreciate you watching. Thank you for tuning in. And as I always say, whenever we judge, blame, and criticize somebody, the reason we do that is there's a piece of ourselves we haven't quite faced yet. And so we're seeing that in somebody else. But it's really showing us the piece of ourselves we haven't faced and we haven't forgiven ourselves for. But the opposite is also true. When we see greatness in other people, we can only see that because we have the greatness in ourselves. If you don't see that in yourself, or if the thought of that makes you uncomfortable, if it creates your inability to be fearless, then the greatness movement is for you. Go to our website, www.thegreatnessmovement.com. We'd be happy to help you with all of it. Have a great night, everybody. See you next week.